Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. On the agenda tonight, we have Greta Van Fleet. Now, these guys are an American band, and I've been asked to look at these guys quite a lot, but I think the first track that I saw from them, it must have been a really random track that's nothing like their normal sound, but this is kind of more like the stuff that was being suggested to me, and I've checked out a few of their tunes since, but this is going to be their track called Highway Tune. Let's get the guys up on screen, and this is from the Sound Lounge, and this is in Chicago, so let's see how these guys get on. I'm going to stop it there straight away because that's how you start a track, with a scorching vocal over the top of a really cool riff, and already tiny little details here. The guitar riff, the first time he played it through, just straight. Second time through, he threw in a little bit of that strumming to get a variation, to make it interesting again the second time, but the riff is already as interesting as it can be anyway. But what a great start to the track.
No stopping at the red light, girl, cause I wanna get you said now. No going at the green light, girl, cause I wanna be with you now. You are my special, you are my special, you are my midnight, yeah. I'm so sweet, I'm so fine, I'm so nice. What
I'm just going to stop it there before we get into the solo, because the singer has got such an amazing voice, and this is Josh, and these three are brothers. So we've got the guitarist, the lead singer, and the bassist are brothers. This is why it's probably so tight and so cool, is that they've just grown up with each other jamming away, and Jake, Sam and Josh just hours and hours, I'm sure, jamming away at home to get this tightness, but really impressive vocal. What I love about Josh's vocals is that he never looks like he's straining, even though he's hitting ridiculously high notes. I mean, for a male range, it's right up there in the tenor range, and it's really effortless. There's no veins popping out of his head or out of his neck or anything. It just seems really easy for him. The other thing that I was expecting when I saw an interview with these guys just on a radio show, I was expecting that when Josh would speak, he'd be like, oh yeah, Sam, yeah, oh yeah, we'll be ready, you know, and his voice would be naturally high. It isn't really high. It's kind of a normal speaking voice. It's not going to be like a Barry White voice. It's probably a little bit higher than my speaking voice, but he's got such range that some singers who have a really high range, or at least sing in a really high range, their speaking voices naturally sit higher anyway. So sometimes you think, oh wow, how can they hit those notes? They're already speaking up in that range anyway. Whereas you get some singers as well, like Josh, who doesn't have a really naturally high voice, but he can hit notes so easily in that high, in that tenor range. It's really impressive. So yeah, and he's also got those mannerisms. He's kind of really confident. I'm sure if there was a stage that he'd be strutting around. Unfortunately, this stage is tiny. It's your typical small venue stage, and I don't know what the setup is. Again, everyone's just sat down. I did a video previously where they had a TV audience from the 70s. And back then, I think it was a lot more formal and people weren't allowed to stand up and get into it. But I don't understand in this day and age how people can sit there with their arms crossed and their legs crossed and listen to this and not get into it. And when I first watched these guys actually performing live on a video on YouTube, it was one of those really rare situations where I got a buzz watching them and listening to the tightness and the overall sound. And I watch a hell of a lot of videos on YouTube, and I rarely get that buzz from watching a performance. It only really happens with the old classic performances from the 70s and the 80s, and the guys that were right at the top of their game and have since then gone on to get the recognition that they deserve because they were so good. And these guys gave me that buzz. As soon as he kind of kicked in with his vocal, you know straight away the flags go up. You go, hang on, this has got potential when you've got a lead singer like that, and then to back it up with really great solid rhythm play. Now, just breaking down the guitar playing like I do on my channel normally with other players, what I love about Jake's playing is that he'll play his really cool crunchy riff. There's not a great deal of overdrive here, very much a Jimmy Page kind of vibe in his playing style. But what I love about the way that he's playing is that he moves his strumming hand to wherever the interesting part of the chord is in terms of whenever he's playing a variation. So if you do play guitar, those little additions that you can add to your chords, sometimes with a major chord, adding in sus4 and then going back to a major chord again. If you don't know what I'm talking about, when you play a chord, there's certain little variations you can make to the chord that are going to change the sound of the chord to make it more interesting, where you can start off with your basic chord, then you can add in an extra note or a variation of the chord to make it sound a little bit more interesting, and then go back to your standard chord. A lot of players, when they play a variation of a chord, they strum the chord exactly the same way as if they were just playing it to begin with without that variation. But what I love about Jake's playing is that he focuses his strumming on the interesting parts of the chord. So if he does add something in, it's so much clearer because he's not hitting 6 strings. He's now condense that down to 4 strings so that you can hear that little addition at the top end. And it's a really subtle thing, but it makes so much difference to make your variations stand out. But there's a lot of stuff going on there that will fly under the radar if you're not listening out for it, or if you're not aware that it's actually happening. And I just had to wait to the end of that wail. What a great vocalist. But going back to the solo, what Jake did there, again, it's a really subtle thing. When you're a 3-piece setup, like I know there's 4 guys here, but we've only got a vocal, 1 guitar, 1 bass and drums. So instrumentally, we're a 3-piece here. A lot of players just go into the solo and don't fill out the sound. It's so difficult to fill out that sound when the lead player goes off into a lead break. You can imagine that if Jake started playing lots of single notes, then the sound would drop out a bit, and you can see that he knows that and he appreciates that. So he does a lot of barring in his solos. Each little lead break, he'll play his little lead break and hit that top end of the chord, back into a lead break, hit the top end of the chord, and then at the end of that solo, he's doing an alternate picking to on the same note, just to keep that sound full and to keep that whole solo section ticking over, and then he's back into his riff again, everything drops out. Really great appreciation of dynamics here as well. So they've got their finger on the pulse with everything here. So loads of elements you can look at here, but they make such a great sound together. But let's get into this just for the last part of the track. And for singers out there, that was an E5. That's just a casual E5 that Josh is throwing in there. And a lot of bands nowadays that are around in the charts would have a real problem trying to cover this and do it exactly the way that these guys do, because of Josh's effortless vocal and there's some great guitar playing in there that really suits the track. So really great performance all round, but let's just get into the end of the track.
I'm so sweet, I'm so fine, I'm so nice. Woman, mama, yeah.
And there we have, and that's it, the end of the track, and everyone goes mild. I mean, just kind of sitting there, applauding. One guy's got his legs crossed and the girl's got her legs crossed next to him. I think this is the problem with me. If I were there, I would get chucked out. I'm sure maybe there's no security there. If there wasn't, then I'd be up at the front of the stage just getting into it, because it's a really exciting new band and just a really cool sound that you don't hear nowadays, just going back to that classic rock, not heaping on loads of overdrive and delay and reverb, just a really cool, clean, crunchy guitar. These guys have really got everything going on here, so I'd really encourage you to check out their stuff and show them a bit of support, because it's great to have a band like this out nowadays, because there's so much stuff out there that isn't anything like as good or as authentic as what these guys can do. And a point I want to make quickly just before the end of the video is that a lot of people in my comments section were saying that these guys are the next or the new Led Zeppelin, and the problem that I've got with that is that I love to hear a band with no preconceptions of what they might sound like and what they might be. So the problem with having that is you're already kind of pigeonholing them, whereas I'd say that they have got a lot of Led Zeppelin sound to them, but I just love them to keep this vibe going and just go in their own direction. And if it just happens to sound like Led Zeppelin, then great, but they're not trying to copy Led Zeppelin. They are just, Greta Van Fleet, and it just so happens that they'll be in the same genre and have a similar sound to Led Zeppelin. And Led Zeppelin fans will get into it and really like it and enjoy the music, but there's never going to be another Led Zeppelin. Back in the day when Led Zeppelin were around, there was so much of a buzz around the music industry, and the fact that people had to wait to get their hands on a record, and you physically got something that you could show off to everybody and you could look at and you could treasure at home. And nowadays it's just whenever anything new comes out, you click a button and you've got it. And it's like, well, where's the thing that I've bought? Oh, it's in the computer somewhere and it plays. So unfortunately, I think a lot of the music industry has lost the romance of actually people getting their hands on a physical product and waiting for something to come out. Nowadays, you can pre-order as well. So you can say, yes, I will have that as soon as it comes out. And then you'll check your computer and you've got it and you play it and you've got nothing to show for it apart from, minus 79p on your bank balance. And a quick shout out to Danny Wagner as well, who's the drummer, and he's not related to the three brothers in this, so he's back there keeping a really solid rhythm going. The rhythm section in this is really solid, and that bass and drums just fly under the radar because they are tight. You can't have a top band without a solid drummer and a bassist that are always on the same page and lay that foundation. So Greta Van Fleet, what a great up and coming band. Check out their stuff if you get a chance. Watch their videos. There's loads of really cool stuff. There's interviews as well that I've found on radio shows. So yeah, check them out. It's great to have a band like this that are just coming out now. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!